Hey everyone, today I wanted to host another type of discussion topic since I feel like I've been doing a couple of those lately as we continue to wait for more details on the 4th free title update. But today what I want to touch upon is something regarding the upcoming release on the PlayStation and Xbox side of things, as of course a base Monster Hunter Rise is set to launch on the 20th for both of those consoles, PS4, PS5, Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles. And in this video we're going to be talking about an interesting article from Game Rant where they make the case that the release of Monster Hunter Rise, specifically dropping day and date on Game Pass, makes Monster Hunter Rise the definitive version of Monster Hunter, which is an interesting topic that I hadn't necessarily seen anyone discuss up until now, or more importantly, kind of like consider, which is a really interesting thought exercise. So I certainly want to encourage you guys to let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? And I certainly want to go over some of the details specifically pointed out in this article. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below of this video for you to check it out if you are so interested. But simply the premise that they mentioned in their headline is Monster Hunter Rise landing on Xbox Game Pass is the best case scenario. They mentioned that Capcom's legacy developer known for some of the most iconic franchises in the industry, Mega Man, Street Fighter, Resident Evil, and among them, other lucrative names in the catalog are Monster Hunter, which debuted in PlayStation back in 2004. Monster Hunter games are consistently some of the best sellers for Capcom, and its 2021 entry of Monster Hunter Rise is primed to become even bigger success by launching on Sony and Microsoft consoles next year, including the availability on Xbox Game Pass. Monster Hunter Rise was a Nintendo Switch exclusive that came to the PC in January, a few months prior to the massive Sunbreak expansion. Sunbreak's free title update are still ongoing, with last month's 3rd free title update adding a chaotic Gore Magala and more Risen-class Elder Dragons. Only the base game will release on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S consoles on January 20th, with Sunbreak following in spring of 2023. Even so, Xbox Game Pass will be undoubtedly give Rise a 3rd win despite lacking crossplay functionality. Now I'm going to skip like a couple of paragraphs here in this article because they're just kind of like going over some of the basic sales figures, how Rise has already kind of like been one of the best sellers. Like I believe the top, if you like combine Rise and Sunbreak together, is already the 3rd best selling game for Capcom's entire history, only behind World and Iceborne, which is extremely exciting for a game that was again with a staggered release both on the Switch and on the PC, and now finally 2 years later making its way to Xbox and PlayStation consoles. So we're going to skip a couple of paragraphs to the bottom of the article where they mentioned that the announcement of Monster Hunter Rise coming to Sony and Microsoft consoles is a significant one because it marks the first time Capcom series is available on all major consoles or systems. Typical entries have been locked to the SKUs like PlayStation 2 or the Nintendo 3DS, and Monster Hunter World was so graphically intensive that it likely never could have made a jump to the Nintendo Switch without cloud support. This makes Monster Hunter Rise the franchise's definitive experience and one that's more accessible on day one on Game Pass title. Microsoft's subscription service is well regarded for offering new AAA and indie experiences alongside a deep catalog of titles from Xbox Game Studios. I would actually have an argument with that since Xbox literally doesn't make any games. They keep buying studios, but they don't actually make games. And they mentioned that Ubisoft and EA and much more. Monster Hunter World was available through Game Pass up until June of 2021, a perfect arrangement considering the series encounters are the best experience with a team of 4 hunters wielding a variety of the main, they actually mean 15 but they say 18 weapon types. It's just as important as Monster Hunter Rise to find a thriving player base by curious Game Pass subscribers and other multiplayer experiences like Marvel's Avengers. That is a point that I'm going to have to come back to because it is an extremely obvious one and I think something worth considering. Unlike Marvel's Avengers, which had an underwhelming reception at launch, Monster Hunter Rise is coming to Xbox Game Pass riding a positive word of mouth, already substantial sales numbers, and the promise of additional updates through the Sunbreak expansion. It is a shame that Capcom did not work out cross-play or cross-save functionalities, but Rise's PC and Switch SKUs show how successful each individual silo can be. With 2023 brimming the game with 2 new ecosystems, it's not hard to imagine Monster Hunter World's losing its crown. Another interesting point. Monster Hunter Rise is available now on the PC and Switch with PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S versions launching on January 20th. So I do think that they make literally the point that I've kind of been trying to hammer home. And one of the reasons why, since I started even playing the PlayStation 5 version of the game for the upcoming review on January 17th, one of the reasons why I wanted to review the PS5 version was just to be able to get a quick handle on what it's going to look like on current gen consoles. And I'm not necessarily too invested in just kind of keeping that character, but I will be eventually transitioning over to playing on Game Pass on or Xbox, in general, on the ecosystem of Xbox, because of the player base. And that is what the article touches on. The fact that there's going to be so many people. We know there's 20 to 25 million people already active on Game Pass. So all of those people are going to have access to Rise. Whether those people are going to play through the first, let's say, 5 quests, or they're just going to log in for the first time, see the introduction, cutscene, and then dip out and never play again, those numbers still count as sales figures. This is why World and Iceborne have such massive sales numbers, because Capcom counts literally every single time someone logs into the game for the very first time, even if they're playing the game through Game Pass, or if you played it through PlayStation Plus, which was available on PlayStation Plus, I believe, for one of those months back in 2020, base Monster Hunter World was. And also, if you signed up for like the original PlayStation 5 launch, like exclusive games that they had available, something like 20 titles, I believe base World was also available through there as well, if you had like base PlayStation Plus like 2 years ago. So all those counts as sales figures. Capcom, it's like messing around with the numbers. This is why the numbers for World seems like so massive. And even the article kind of mentions that now this game being on Nintendo Switch, on PC via Steam, it's going to also launch on Windows on PC, which is interesting, but nonetheless still interesting. Now finally launching on PlayStation 4, which is one of the more massive consoles from last generation. Of course, the extremely popular but highly underwhelming PlayStation 5, and then Xbox One, Xbox Series S, and Xbox Series X on Game Pass, which I think is the biggest divider there between the PlayStation and the Xbox version side of things. I think ultimately makes it so Rise will overtake the World sales number and ultimately become like the most played Monster Hunter game. And the article mentions that because of that, just a possibility, it makes Monster Hunter Rise the franchise's definitive experience, because it's now been available on every major console. And it's something that you cannot say for World, you cannot say for 3 Ultimate, 4 Ultimate, Double Cross, or anything like that. It's just one of those things that just finally Capcom's decided to put this game on every single console. And because of that, I think it's going to be probably the most popular game down the road. Now, a lot of people, I've seen some really interesting takes from people, like how they're like against Rise or Sunbreak in general. They call it more arcadey, more action-based, only because of the fact that the graphics are not necessarily up to par with World. But if you're not necessarily worried about graphics and you're actually worried about having fun, more people will actually tell you that Rise and Sunbreak feel better to play, more fun to play, more engaging to play, because they're not slow and methodical. A lot of people just want to play fast action games, and that's what World that ultimately lacked. It wasn't one of those games that felt too fluid in that way. It felt still tied to some of the changes that they were still kind of like transitioning through from the 3DS and PSP titles. So I think some of those changes that have now been completely removed, some of those like slow limitations that you had available even in World, and have them just completely gone out of the way, has made Rise just an extremely faster game, and I think ultimately a more appealing experience. And I think Game Pass is ultimately going to showcase that. The numbers for Game Pass, I think, are going to be massive. Whether it is 5 million people, whether it is 10 million people that end up playing it, even just once. But there will be an active player base there, I think more so than PlayStation. Because again, PlayStation, you have to buy it. You have to pay the $40 for base Rise. Eventually another 30 to 40 for Sunbreak. Whereas on Game Pass, you already have Rise. Whether you are invested enough to buy Sunbreak at that point, that will be another point of discussion that we can get into in the spring of next year. But it will have a lot of people checking the game out, which is, I think, the more important thing for Capcom, and I think the more important thing for the player base. And having a healthy player base, especially online, is the reason why the Nintendo Switch right now has been the leading platform for this game. The reason why PC on Steam has kind of like lagged, and people need to do mods to be able to like play with people online, because the limitations of like, you could only play with people in your region. You cannot even play with Asian players unless you actually change your localization to like Japanese or whatever. That is a mess that Steam needs to sort out. but on Game Pass, you're not going to have any of those limitations. You're going to be able to play with anyone all over the world, and because they have Game Pass, more people are going to be available. I still think ultimately at the end of the day, the Nintendo Switch version will have the biggest player base, but of course, it's going to end sooner since Sunbreak's 5th free title update, if that is set to be the last free title update, that will be releasing on the Switch and PC Steam side of things before it drops on PlayStation and Xbox. So eventually that player base will either move over to maybe Game Pass or on PC or even PlayStation at that point. And there will be a little bit more longevity of a player base on the Xbox side of things because of Game Pass. Again, that is just the theory that I have, but I do think this article kind of touches on that, hints on it a little bit, and I'm certainly interested to hear everyone's takes on whether it is you're considering making that change to Xbox or maybe even PlayStation. I know I made a poll a couple of weeks back discussing that, and there were some people who said that they're willing to change, although again, you're not bringing over your character. You do have to start again. Believe me when I tell you, just playing right now on the PlayStation 5, starting all over again is a pain in the butt. But it's a review process, so it is what it is. It's part of the, you sign up to it. But having to start once again on Xbox is going to be a pain. But if you plow through it, you just get to the end of Narwa and then just wait for Sunbreak. I think more people will be more than happy to be able to do Sunbreak all over again, to be able to finally put in that grind of Anomaly Investigation level 200 on a console that they feel comfortable playing in, and more importantly, looks the part. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications whenever videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.